Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. Yesterday, in the Dominican Republic, things did not go according to plan for then unbeaten up-and-comer Vivien Rodriguez, who was bested by a game challenger in Vivien Rodriguez.
Hitter of the unexpected.
So after the fight, Vivien Rodriguez posted a lengthy caption to her social media that reads, "First of all, thank God for allowing me to go up to the ring once again. Thank my family, my audience, my work team, promoter Sean Boxing, and Belgium Peña. Thank you for once again trusting me and giving me the opportunity to present myself in such a majestic event, and that day after day strive to form me as an athlete and be an example in female boxing of my country and the whole world in my short time as a professional. This wasn't our night, but in this event, I brought with me some more emotional experiences with them. One more thing to fix in my career and keep working to improve everything we lack. Thank you so much for your support, and we're going forward with God."
So what is it that she was lacking? What is it that she has to overcome? What lost her the fight?
Pressure from Vivien Rodriguez, who came barreling forward, throwing punches and bunches, swinging for the fences, and one got in. A good one got in.
Looks to have been a hard right hand, right down the pipe that Vivien did not recover from. Put simply, she got caught.
Couldn't recover and was a deer in the headlights for Vivien Rodriguez's onslaught. Vivien, the far more experienced fighter of the two, the seasoned veteran, who upon smelling blood in the water, went in for the kill. Sensing that she had Vivien hurt,
She went for it.
Vivien Rodriguez reminds me of is a more spiteful version of a Sky Nicholson. She's a textbook boxer, a classic boxer. They've got the same sweet spot, they've got the same range. Their best punches are their straight punches, and they like to move around, fight from a distance. Now, where Vivien is different from a Sky Nicholson is she's a bit more spiteful, lets her hands go more, and tries 4 more punches, apparently to her detriment, because it was in the exchange that she got caught.
Stopped in the 9th round.
I thought she had this one in the bag. I thought she would be able to coast to a points decision with Vivien, but has since turned out to be a miscalculation. Hindsight is 2020. At 7-0, she wasn't ready for Vivien, who's got 30 professional bouts.
I thought she was. So did her team. That's why they put her in there.
Punch resistance, toughness. It's one of those things to where either you got it or you don't. You hear so much about the psychology of boxing and boxing being a mental sport that the physicality of it often fades into the background, and people tend to forget you do need to be able to hold a shot. It matters how well you take a punch, and oftentimes finesse fighters.
Vivien is a finesse fighter.
They don't take the best punch. Perhaps that's why there's so much of an emphasis on defense from these kinds of fighters with this kind of a base style.
Because they don't take the best punch, and they know they don't take the best punch, which is why they fight that way.
Cautious and careful from a safe distance, always on their toes. Vivien is a good fighter. I've seen her on a good number of occasions, and she is best described as a finesse fighting kind of fighter whose best punches are her straight punches.
Though mid-range to inside, not so much.
So what happens now? It's not the end of the world that Vivien lost her first professional fight. She can come again. So many fighters before her have.
Alicia Baumgartner lost to Christina Lenardatu many years ago. Early in her career, Natasha Jonas. She was actually knocked out.
She got stopped by Vivien Obanov. Shock upset loss. Just like this one. Nina Menke got stopped early in her career too, by Katie Taylor.
Every single one of those fighters was able to rebound and go on to become a world champion. All three of those fighters are world champions now, so Vivien can come again.
It's not the end of the world, and she's young enough that she has plenty of time to recover, to rebound, and come again.
Future's not as bright, though.
Oh, I identified young Vivien as one of the better, more talented youngsters in today's featherweight division. That really is one of the deepest divisions in all of women's boxing. But if you're getting beat by the likes of a Vivien Rodriguez,
It's gonna happen to you with a Raven Chapman with a Kara sorting stall.
it's going to happen to you with a better grade of fighter than the one you just fought.
She lost.
It's unexpected and it's unfortunate, but it happens, and it happened to Vivien yesterday.
What a way to cap off the year.
So Vivien Rodriguez moves up the WBA's rank standings and comes one step closer to challenging for that alphabet title. Vivien, she's got some catching up to do.
And if Canelo Alvarez does make sense and you step into the ring with him, obviously that's a super fight for boxing. How does that go down? Just break it down for us a little bit. We want to see it obviously happen.
I ain't gonna break it down to you. You know what I mean? How it's gonna happen. The strategy is me leaving with my hand, you know, rolls and everybody mouth dropping. That's how I can, you know, sums it up in a little bit of.
With his career at the time, you know, the age and the biggest fights out there is maybe looking after the Canelo. And from what I kind of hear rumors that it might happen by May.
It's based on what Robert Garcia is hearing, and he's in the loop. He's in the know.
Been wondering a lot about what Canelo's gonna do moving forward. Does he stay on the PBC side of things where he has been for his last 2 or 3 fights?
There's no reason to stay over there, you understand. For the last 2, they didn't even provide him with the bodies. They didn't provide the opponents. And if they're not doing that, then what reason is there to stay over there?
Jaime Munguia was a Golden Boy fighter at the time. Edgar Berlanga's with Matchroom.
Scarcity of big fights left in the super middleweight division. There are not a lot of big fights there for Canelo. Not a lot of big ones, though he still is a reigning champion with mandatories in the queue, most of which he doesn't seem to want to satisfy. So what is he looking for?
Be honest, we don't want to see somebody like Canelo fight the likes of a William Skull or a Diego Pacheco, but then again, how many of us wanted to see him fight Edgar Berlanga?
His career is winding down. So is Terrence's. At 37 years old, he's getting long in the tooth. He doesn't have much time left. He says he wants Canelo Alvarez. I'm not against it. I don't like his chances either, though some people do, and that's what makes it a big fight. That some people actually think Terrence can win.
Rick Glacier does.
Rick Glacier said, "You Terrence Crawford doubters need to stop with your false narrative that the reason Crawford wants the Canelo fight is because it's a cash-out fight for Crawford. Nothing could be further from the truth. Crawford believes he's capable of winning, and so do I. That's why I'm calling it a cash-in fight for Crawford. You doubters are the same jerk-offs that thought Errol Spence was going to destroy Crawford. And today, 17 months later, Errol's still dealing mentally and physically with the beatdown that Crawford laid on him. It's called boxing for a very good reason."
And that's a part of what makes this a big fight. That there are some people out there who think Terrence can win. Nobody thought Jaime was going to win the fight with Canelo, and even less people thought Edgar would. But with Terrence, some people think he has a chance.
For a fighter as dominant as Terrence Crawford has been, it's hard for some to imagine that he could lose to anyone. Even Canelo. That's a part of the intrigue. That's a part of what makes this a big fight. But what else makes it a big fight is that Turkey El Sheikh is behind Terrence.
You can't pretend that there's no money in it, that there's nothing in it for Canelo.
If nothing else, there's a lot of money. So we'll see if it happens.
And if it doesn't?
If it isn't Canelo next year, are you done from the sport, Terrence?
I wouldn't say that. Right now, I'm just weighing out my options and looking for the best opportunities and options for Terrence Crawford in my career. Everybody got answers that need to be answered, you know, and the only way they can be answered is if me and Canelo is in the ring and we fight. So if that fight does happen, then everybody answers that.
If it isn't Canelo next year, are you done from the sport, Terrence?
I wouldn't say that. Right now, I'm just weighing out my options and looking for the best opportunities and options for Terrence Crawford in my career. everybody got answers that need to be answered, you know, and the only way they can be answered is if me and Canelo is in the ring and we fight. So if that fight does happen, then everybody answers that, and questions and do's and don'ts will be answered.
Crawford.
Who should Terence fight if he can't land the Canelo Alvarez fight? Who else is out there? Well, I think the next best available option would have to be the winner of Virgil Ortiz versus Israel Madrimov, provided that Virgil is the winner. Some people don't think he's gonna be, but if he pulls it off, Crawford versus Ortiz is alright. Crawford versus Murtazaliev.
Bakram Murtazaliev is still coming off that big win over Tim Kazoo, and I don't see anybody in a hurry to call him out. I don't see anybody in a hurry to fight him, even though he shocked the boxing world.
Crawford versus Murtazaliev, I could go for that. And I could also go for Terence Crawford versus the winner of Spence versus Fundoria that they're said to still be working on. Now, I don't know if and when that fight is going to come into fruition. How many months is it going to take?
If Spence wins, if Sebastian wins, whoever wins, Terence versus the winner of that fight, that's a good-sized fight for 3 of the 4 major titles.
The caveat is the time frame. How much time is it going to take to make that fight, and how much more time is it going to take to put the winner of that fight in the ring with Terence if they even want to fight Terence?
Crawford.
Those are a few options, though none of them are as big or as prestigious as a Canelo Alvarez fight. Because he's calling him out, some people have turned against Terence Crawford.
Because he's calling out Canelo.
Where I don't have a problem with that, because Canelo is facing a scarcity of options at 168. Terence wants to move up there and fight him. It's his funeral. It's his peril.
I'm a Canelo Alvarez fan, but I'm not a fanatic. I'm not a fanboy.
You're at the top. People are gonna call you out. That's the way it is. What do you expect? That nobody should ever mention him?
Get off his dick.
Terence wants to fight him, then let them fight. And super middleweight news, in keeping with the theme of unbeaten up-and-comers in sink or swim situations. It was officially announced a few days ago that unbeaten Diego Pacheco would be taking on unbeaten Steven Nelson. The rumors are true.
Diego Pacheco, very big for super middleweight, standing in at 6'4", to the more moderately sized Steven Nelson. Diego's 23, whereas Steven is 36.
Diego's got a 79-inch wingspan to Steven, who's got a 75-inch wingspan. This is going to be for lesser versions, secondary versions of the WBC title and the WBO title. Diego sports professional record of 22 wins with no losses, no draws, 18 knockouts. Trained by Jose Benavidez Sr., the father and trainer of David Benavidez.
As opposed to Steven Nelson, who is trained by Brian Bomac McIntyre, who trains Terence Crawford, trains Keyshawn Davis. Needless to say, he's got the stronger corner.
Though Brian won't be the one fighting the fight for him. Steven Nelson sports an unblemished record of 20 wins with no losses, no draws, 16 knockouts. You used to see this guy on the undercards of top-ranked shows, but when Terence Crawford left the banner, it would seem that Steven Nelson left with him, and he hasn't been as active as he used to be these last few years. He's been averaging something like 1 fight a year for the last 3. Last in action in August of this year on the undercard of Crawford versus Madrimov. He was in there with Marcos Rodriguez, who he stopped in 5 rounds. He's actually won 5 of his last 6 by way of knockout. This is a good fighter. And this is a sink-or-swim situation for young Diego Pacheco. Matchroom has fallen under criticism for perhaps matching their young, unbeaten up-and-comers too tough. That Mark Castro suffered his first professional loss. Jaleel Hackett suffered his first professional loss.
Is Diego Pacheco about to?
Marcos Rodriguez did in his last fight with Steven Nelson. He was unbeaten going in, though not going out. I suppose it all depends on what your philosophy is. Should Eddie Hearn take it easier on these fighters? Match them softer? Work harder to mask their inadequacies until such a time as he can turn over a profit from those fighters? Or is there no profit at all in trying to fool the boxing community at large into thinking that these fighters are better than what they actually are? That in order to make an omelet, you have to crack a couple of eggs. To forge a diamond in the rough, well, that requires pressure. And you're not going to get that if you don't apply any. So when he puts a Diego Pacheco in a fight with a Steven Nelson, a fight that he might lose, it's a necessary evil, because not every unbeaten up-and-comer is cut out for this.
And if you are, you have to get out there and show it.
No, I'm not a proponent that Eddie Hearn coddle these unbeaten up-and-comers on the premise that they're unbeaten.
So what?
So that they can all run around here thinking they're the next Floyd Mayweather? That first professional loss can be a humbling experience to get a fighter and his team back down to earth. Keep them more grounded.
The fight.
So I remember Diego Pacheco's fight a few months ago in April against unbeaten Sean McCalman. Diego didn't look too hot in that fight.
He looked better in the next one with Maciej Suliecki of Poland, who he stopped in 6 rounds. But the fight before that, the Sean McCalman fight, and it's available on DAZN. You can watch it.
Didn't look good. Scraped a decision over 10 rounds.
Crawford.
Sean wasn't that big a guy either. Diego was the bigger man in the ring. It'll be the same with Steven Nelson, who still is an unbeaten fighter, though I don't know that he's fought anyone as talented or as capable as Diego yet. That Steven Nelson, 36 years old, he has managed to stay an unbeaten fighter, though not by fighting the somebodies in this division. So it's a very intriguing situation that this is a sink-or-swim fight for the both of them.
The assignment for Diego, he's got to use his height and length to manage the distance at which the fight is being fought. He's got to keep Steven at arm's length, because if you let him get close, he'll get to use his power. And he does have power. They both do.
They're both strong punches.
But because Steven is stumpier and stockier, he's got to get close to Diego before he can use his power.
Diego's got to box. He's got to move. He's got to use his jab, mitigate the exchanges. Don't get into too many of those.
Yeesh.
You could be the next unbeaten fighter at Matchroom that suffers their first professional loss. He's got to exhibit some poise here, some patience.
It's a good fight.
Kevin Rooney is the matchmaker behind this one. It's Kevin Rooney that everybody's criticizing whenever a Matchroom prospect takes their first professional loss.
But what would you have them do?
Do you think you're supposed to treat every unbeaten up-and-comer like they're the next Floyd Mayweather or the next Canelo? Would seem a common sense argument that they're not. That most fighters coming through are not of that ilk. So you shouldn't operate on that assumption. And those two fighters didn't go on to become who they became by avoiding the tough fights. No, Floyd was matched pretty tough.
What people choose to remember is the tail end of his career, when he was the one in charge and taking no stock of the way it was in the beginning, before he became the money man.
By age 27, Canelo Alvarez had fought Austin Trout, Floyd Mayweather, Erislandy Lara, Miguel Cotto, Gennady Golovkin.
By age 27.
By age 26, Oscar De La Hoya and Felix Trinidad were fighting each other. They were already very accomplished fighters at the time. By age 26.
You gotta do it.
To find out what kind of fighter you really are, and for a promoter to find out what he's invested in.
You gotta do it.
Sink or swim time.